at CFIT on this project. CFIT did a report on shared taxis and their role in rural public transport, and Chris was one of the people who did the research on that for us. He's here today. That sort of project is very atypical of rural areas of Britain. Cumbria is an exception. And before the general election, the Conservatives took up the recommendations from the Commission for Integrated Transport report that we should have a large-scale demonstration of shared taxi services in rural Britain, and said, yes, we are committed to support this. And that raises for me the really interesting question of whether one could take Rural Wheels, one of the leading examples across the whole of Britain, and say, right, we're really going to go for it. I gather that the PCT has just recently said they're going to buy into the Rural Wheels service, which is a really good base load for the service. What's the potential to use that as the basis for a local sustainable travel fund bid or a regional growth fund bid? I think that could be really exciting. And my final little idea is smarter travel programmes. 3 towns in England, Darlington, Peterborough and Worcester, invested in a very wide range of smarter travel interventions, working with businesses, working with schools, working with universities and so on, to reduce car use between 2004 and 2009. They cut car mileage of the whole population by 7%, which is pretty phenomenal. Very high value for money, according to DFT appraisal, which is not published yet, but however much they try, whatever their conclusion is, this is very high value for money. But people tend to say, but yeah, Darlington, Peterborough and Worcester, population of 100,000, there's nothing like that in Cumbria. The really interesting thing is that idea is now spreading to rural areas. I live in Mid Wales, and Bangor in North Wales has recently become a sustainable travel city, very small town actually. And I put up the logo for Westport, which is a very small town on the west coast of Ireland, very, very big sort of tourist area. They have Westport Smarter Travel. They're bidding for funding from the Irish government to become a smarter travel area. And they've just built up the most phenomenal programme of community involvement in encouraging use of bikes, use of public transport and so on. And I think they're really interesting because they're such a small place that the local community links are actually what's driving the programme. So it's not necessarily about stuff coming down from above. It's a very, very strong partnership between the local council and the local community organisations. And it seems to me that there's the potential to do something like that, potentially in the Lake District National Park, actually, because there's so much already going on in the Lake District National Park and there's so much demand for travel and the carbon impact is potentially so huge if you get it wrong. I think Smarter Travel Lake District National Park would be a really exciting sort of regional growth fund bid.
It's important that we understand where we stand in relation not just to Cumbria, but aviation as a whole. Yeah. I'm going to quote you some numbers from a UN report in 2005. The UK, all of the UK activities in 2004-5 quoted were 2% of all global emissions of CO2. UK aviation was 6% of the UK's total CO2, and that UK aviation 6% was 0.1% of all the global emissions. Okay. It's a global activity that needs a global solution, okay? And there are major inroads being made by the industry as a whole, and I would encourage you to look at Sustainable Aviation, which is an organisation that brings together airlines, aircraft manufacturers, engine manufacturers, air traffic control and airports who are actively working this, and we've seen significant improvements.
Now,
I just wanted to put some
that's fine. I know Mike really wants to respond. Actually, Mike, I'm not going to let you. Partly because you've had a lot from all of us up on the panel, and you people sitting around these round tables haven't had much opportunity to say anything. Thank you very much for that.
Slightly slow, but actually because the light was red anyway, and then smart driving technique is up another gear nice and early, and then use your momentum to get through to the corner and just let the car take you around the corner instead of constantly accelerating and unnecessarily braking. All the time just thinking about the momentum you've got stored up in your car and using that momentum to get through to the point, so the car takes you to the point you want to arrive at. with as little accelerating as you can and less unnecessarily braking. But country environment, you can use these techniques just as well to save yourself a significant amount of fuel. A good 15% of your fuel can be saved by using these techniques. So quite important to get these. So the important thing here is that we are going to be stuck with the petrol and diesel motor cars for the time being. So that's important to make the most of those and reduce the consumption on those vehicles that we're currently using, what our infrastructure is currently set up for.
But people like me do things like that, other people like most people go into the hospital. About Cumbria, to hospitals, to shopping, to
My day job, I used to be a haulage contractor, I still am a haulage contractor and a bus operator. So very passionate about travel, highways and carbon reduction and different forms of carbon reduction. But I also must say technology is technology, and we've evolved through technology. We evolved from the penny farthing bike to the 44-ton Arctic. So listening to everything and everybody's comments, we must also evaluate that there's got to be a balance of choice on what people want to do and what they don't want to do. And that is why the LTP3, which is a local transport operation for Cumbria, is where we need to be. This is not the end, this is just the beginning of the conversation. We will now be putting this together. Thank you all very much for coming, and we all hope to see you next year at the second Cumbria Transport Conference. Thank you all very much. Thank you.